Our culture is one that is better at recognizing areas where women either experience discrimination or experience hardships than it is at recognizing areas where men experience discrimination or hardships.
Oh
But
yeah.
because of your job, you are able to empathize with men in a way that I think is pretty unique, both among men and women. I mean, I myself, only a few years ago, came to have my mind opened to
Mhm,
ways in which men experience hardship and discrimination.
mhm.
But I mean, you've known that for a long time. What's that like to occupy that kind of unique perspective you have?
Well, it's great because whenever I went down to the legislature, it was sort of seen as like, oh wow, this is a female, this is a woman who is trying to advocate for more fair treatment of men and fathers. And I had clients that over the years would say, "Oh, well, yes, we should go down to the legislature. We should get the laws changed." And they would come down and they would testify, but there was always this sort of underlying, well, of course, they're just a disgruntled dad. They were marginalized because, well, you're just an angry dad, and to be the sort of the face of our group, obviously that was a huge benefit. Some of the other activists, the women's activists, I mean, literally, I found there was this one time when we were going into a hearing room or on a bill. I can't remember what it was, but I was getting some real evil eyes from some of these other people who were, oh, great, there's that Lisa Scott again. They could see that I was able to detach this from gender. I mean, it's like if I'm down there and I'm advocating for fairness, equal treatment for both genders, they would have a hard time marginalizing me as an angry male. I'm seeing, cases where there's horrible unfairness to dads. And I've seen cases where there's great unfairness to moms too. Getting the perspective, though, I mean, it really dates back to, um, many of those early, really high conflict cases where some of my, clients who were dads, and they were good dads. They were really super good dads. And they were put through the ringer and they were just beaten down by the system. I had a real, personal sense that, um, this is real. This is not, cases where someone they're really an abuser and they just want to, they want to get back at their ex. And so they're doing everything they can through the legal system. I think in some cases, the soon to be ex realized that the spouse was a really good dad and probably would get more time or maybe even get custody. And so the other spouse they made a first strike, domestic violence, child abuse, whatever, because they knew that the dad was a good dad. What did they see when they walked into a courthouse? All these brochures. How can we help you? Are you being abused? Are you a victim? Here, let's help you. And if you're a woman, you had all the help you could possibly need. But if you were a dad, it was like, where's the help? So a lot of these women really took advantage of and manipulated the system to get the upper hand on the dad, being able to go out to the legislature or doing some of our community events and things, um, and being able to stand up and say, hey, I'm a woman advocating for fairness for both men and women and guys and gals. And it was a lot harder, not impossible, but it was a lot harder for the other people, the other side, to denigrate me. I could tell that there was sort of like this, well, she's obviously being manipulated by these fathers, these guys that they just don't want to pay child support. I could see that sort of, underlying attitude that they must have thought I was being just used by them. But, that's certainly not the case. The guys who went through these horrible custody cases, after the case was over, it took them years and years to recover financially and otherwise, right? For them to be able to do any of this activist work was almost impossible for some of them. They literally couldn't spend any time. They couldn't take a half a day or a day off to go down to Olympia. What we did with tabs was we tried to bring in people and hear from different people, understand what their issues were and what their what their frustrations were about the system, and then take that and try to fashion bills and things down there in Olympia to make it better. I think that these last few years in the legislature, because you asked me, if things are better or worse. In some ways, there's bad things are better, but in some ways it's getting worse. I still get calls from people that say they read some of my articles on my website, and they're going literally, never met me, never heard of me before. They're going, I thought you were talking about my case. And sometimes they're literally their case is over, and they're just saying, can I help out and become an activist, or can I help change the system? If there's people out there that are listening to this and saying, hey, it may be kind of too late for them, but they may think, well, maybe there's some things I can do to help out the next generation and make things fair for my kids or other people's kids. So I appreciate you being able to, doing some of the stuff and taking the lead to make things better.
Thank you. I appreciate all the work you've done and your sincere desire for equality and fairness, and nothing more, nothing less.
Exactly. And that's all I have ever wanted. I mean, I'm not trying to make men or women or dads or moms superior. I always wanted it to be, okay, you should, if you go into the system, you should be treated equally and fairly, and you should not be prejudged based on what you look like. And isn't that what everybody wants? I mean, isn't that what we hear every day? People should not be prejudiced or prejudged or whatever. And that's all I ever tried to do. And I'm hoping that it will get to that point.